towards the mid-20s. Fresher as you head towards the coast. UV and pollen levels will be high. Central and northern Scotland will stay rather cloudy this afternoon with the risk of some rain in places. Southern Scotland should remain largely dry with some sunshine. Temperatures reaching 20 Celsius. Often cloudy across Northern Ireland this afternoon with the risk of a few light showers. Some bright or sunny spells developing in between. Temperatures climbing into the low 20s. Staying dry this evening for England and Wales. Still the risk of some rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome. This is Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes, on telly, DAB and online. Today we'll be discussing the Conservative leadership race. We'll celebrate the women's success so far in the Euros and, of course, claims that the Lionesses team are too white to the BBC. I'll be joined in the studio throughout by the political commentator and author Joanne Nadler. But first, here's the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Darren, thank you and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 2 o'clock. The Met Office is advising people to look out for the elderly, children and those with underlying health conditions as the UK is predicted to hit 40 degrees next week. It's issued its first and highest red extreme heat alert for parts in England on Monday and Tuesday, meaning the hot weather will be a possible threat to life. The Cabinet Office will chair an emergency COBRA meeting today as some schools prepare to close and the NHS warns the heat wave will be a nightmare for patients and staff. The UK Health Security Agency has declared a national emergency. Jim Dale, senior meteorologist at British Weather Services, says red warning is there for good reason.
I don't think what's happened in the recent past has been particularly, in terms of what we've received in the UK, has been particularly sort of attached to say, oh, that's climate change. I actually think this one is, without doubt. This is why it's the crossroads. This is why it's serious. 40 degrees is not a figure to be, put under the carpet and say, well, that's fine, we'll live with that, because it isn't, because it will actually kill people.
Meanwhile, in Europe, hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes as wildfires sweep across parts of Spain, France and Portugal. More than 1,000 firefighters, supported by helicopters, have been battling fires all week as officials in Europe issued health warnings for the heatwave in the coming days. Some 400 residents have so far been evacuated in the Malaga region of Spain, with temperatures expected to hit over 40 degrees there over the next few days. The final 5 Conservative leader candidates have faced the first of 3 live television debates, clashing over tax cuts and gender politics. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak defended his economic policies, calling Foreign Secretary Liz Truss's plans a fairy tale. Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch and International Trade Secretary Penny Mordaunt came to blows over trans issues, whilst Tom Tugendhat, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, said trust in the Tory party has been collapsing. Speaking to GB News earlier, he said he thought the debate went well.
I thought Rishi was all over the detail. I thought Kemi made her points extremely clearly. I thought it was perfectly clear that Penny knew what she was on about and was explaining her policies and her issues well. And Liz made a very good case for why she was so important in government for the last 10 years. I think, frankly, I think that demonstrates a huge depth of talent in the Conservative Party and why Keir Starmer should be very worried.
Well, speaking this morning, Kemi Badenoch says she's feeling confident after last night's debate.
I think it went very well. I've never done a televised debate before, and I more than held my own.
And Rishi Sunak says the Conservative candidates are all on the same side.
I've got enormous respect and admiration for all of my colleagues who are standing to be leader, and it's right that we have passionate debate about these issues. And when this election is over, we have to remember we're all part of the same Conservative team, the same Conservative family, and we're going to come together and serve the British people.
In other news, Sri Lanka's parliament is to elect a new president after months of protest in the country over an economic crisis. President Rajapaksa has resigned and fled to Singapore to escape protesters who'd stormed his home and offices. The Prime Minister of the country, who's also faced calls to resign, is standing in until a new president is elected. It's as a shipment of fuel has arrived to provide some relief to the crisis-hit nation. A nurses' union has called a planned 5% pay rise offered to millions of public sector workers unacceptable. The Royal College of Nursing, who suggested an increase above the level of inflation, which is at 11%, says the rise is insufficient. It's demanding the government give nurses an immediate, substantial pay rise. Health unions have been waiting for months for a decision on pay, following an NHS recommendation to ministers earlier this year. In the Women's Euro 2022, the Lionesses will go into the last 8, having won their first 3 games without conceding a single goal. England knocked Northern Ireland out of the competition last night, beating them 5-0 in the Group A match in Southampton. The team will face either Spain or Denmark in the quarter-finals. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now, though, it's back to Darren.
Welcome to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. Here's what's coming up on the show. The 5 remaining Tory leadership candidates faced off in the first live telly debate of the contest over trust tax cuts and the cost of living crisis last night. I'll be talking to a handful of Tory MPs to see who they think should get the keys to number 10. The Women's Euros has broken the record for the total attendance at a European Women's Championship, despite still being in the group stage. And the Lionesses beat Northern Ireland 5-0 last night. It looks like England are a force to be reckoned with. And sticking with the women's football, you might have seen the clip of the BBC's Ely Barber claiming that the England team is too white. I'll be getting the thoughts of Baroness Kate Hoey, who was not impressed, I think it's fair to say, with those remarks. That's what we're talking about for the next hour. As ever, your voice is much more important than my own. Who should get the keys to number 10? Did anyone impress you on the Channel 4 debate last night? Or frankly, are you asking for Boris to come back and say it's all right, pet, all's forgiven? Tweet me at GB News or email me on gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can watch us on YouTube and don't forget Facebook. Our page is bustling with content. Cheers very much. Now, I'll probably get cancelled for saying this, but here goes nothing. We in this country like to present ourselves as a better way of life. We're tolerant, progressive and liberal-minded, unlike some states around the world. We treat women in the same way we treat men. Actually, I think in some cases we like to think we prioritise the protection of women in a way in which we don't for men. We see campaigns warning men not to stare. We hear about the threat of mansplaining and the hashtag #MeToo campaign, which highlighted a predacious abuse of power. The world's good and great made their voices known online and on our streets that this couldn't continue, that no girl or woman should ever face such things ever again. But I put it to you that in many respects, the more progressive, liberal and tolerant we purport to become, the more regressive we actually move as far as women's rights are concerned. You see, if you're not the right sort of woman, then to hell with any idea of protection. Women who argue that biological men who simply self-ID, wake up one morning and decide I'm Doreen, not Darren, as a woman, shouldn't be allowed into sex-segregated spaces like changing rooms and women's refuges. Some of them, domestic abuse survivors, like J.K. Rowling. Fair enough, you might think. Not so. These women can lose their jobs, they can lose their incomes, they can even face death threats. You see, we like women, but only if they know their place in 2022's identity pecking order. Being the wrong kind of woman is perhaps exemplified in a report out this week. The Telford Inquiry revealed case after case of rapes and abuse of over 1,000, and I repeat that number, 1,000 young women over decades. It sounds like it should be part of some disturbing drama, not the day-to-day life in liberal Britain. So how could it happen here? We place the protection of women and girls above all else, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. When primarily working-class girls asked for help, a brave act in and of itself, the authorities, social workers, schools, councils, and even coppers turned the other cheek. One of the survivors actually said that they were dismissed as child prostitutes. Whilst Westminster and others tweeted about hashtag #MeToo to show just how virtuous they are, officials ignored the destruction of lives without platforms in Parliament or polite society. Now again, these women ought to have known their place, apparently, in the identity pecking order. Both trans and ethnic minorities are above women in our new intolerance. A girl of 12 was repeatedly raped only hours after police had ignored her begging for help in what's been described by Maggie Oliver, herself a former detective constable with Greater Manchester Police, as a case that's not unique. And I tell you with all honesty and sincerity that it turns my stomach and breaks my heart. These girls won't see protests on the streets for them. It would be too politically insensitive to do so. They might be accused of racism. These girls won't see social media hashtags for them. It may stir up racial tensions. And these girls won't hear of how this will never happen again, because heaven forfend somebody not invite me back to their candlelit supper or unfollow me on Twitter or Instagram. And this is the consequence of political correctness in Britain. It stifles speech and it stifles debate and leads to the creation of authorities that feel too afraid to do their damn jobs and protect society's most vulnerable groups. On Thursday, calls for a public inquiry into sexual exploitation in Oldham were rejected. Even now, given all that we've eventually found out, it's still considered too uncomfortable a conversation to have. In any genuinely liberal and tolerant society, there wouldn't be fear of being accused of transphobia or racism when it comes to seeking conversations and voicing concerns about the protection of women and girls. If you ask me, we need to push back against this culture of political correctness and fear of saying the wrong thing. It means nothing's said and nothing's heard at all. And as we hear arguments during the Tory leadership campaign about maternity legislation being stripped of the words mother and woman, perhaps misogyny, in 2022, is the one acceptable form of intolerance remaining. And I'd like to see a pushback before we actually usher in an age in which certain groups matter more than others. So after all of that, if I've still got a job, the Conservative leadership race is well and truly underway. The remaining 5 candidates took part in the first debate last night, with the majority of people saying that Rishi Sunak and Kemi Badenoch came out on top, with Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt faring the worst. But of the remaining candidates, who should get the keys to number 10 and their mitts on Carrie's wallpaper? Well, here, to make the case for their favourite candidates, I'm delighted to say are Lee Anderson, the MP for Ashfield, who's backing Kemi Badenoch, the MP for St Ives, Derek Thomas, who's thrown his weight behind Penny Mordaunt, and the MP for North West Durham, Richard Holden, who wants Rishi Sunak in number 10. Richard, I'll start with you for starters then. Who do you actually think won last night's debate? According to a snap poll of Conservative Party members, it was actually Tom Tugendhat who stole the day.
Well, I thought Rishi did a cracking job last night. I think he presented himself very well. I think he sort of almost ended up chairing the debate in a part of it because he was trying to get out of the other candidates exactly what their plans are. And I think he also came across in a very trustworthy, realistic and honest way when it comes to the big issues that are facing the country at the moment, particularly around trying to deal with those inflationary pressures that every household's facing in the country. And I want to see taxes go down as much as the next guy, and so does Rishi. We've got to deal with inflation first. Otherwise, any tax cuts we provide for people just get eaten up with higher costs.
So, Derek Thomas, do you agree with that? Do you actually think that these candidates for the leadership are being a little bit too Panglossian? You know, they're running away with the country's bank balance.
I think there is a danger of that, and what I hear from Penny is much more sensible, much more common sense. But in terms of how it went last night, I think all 5 candidates demonstrated real talent on the Conservative benches, and that should encourage and help the country. But let's face it, what actually needs to happen right now is for my colleagues, MPs, to decide who they want to go into the final 2. So these TV debates are helpful, but that isn't really the priority right now. But I think what Penny does is come across as authentic. She's very keen and very clear that actually what she wants is to talk less about the leader, in other words, the Prime Minister number 10, and more about the ship and how we run good government for everyone in the country, wherever they live, including right down in my neck of the woods, West Cornwall, right through up to the top of Scotland.
So, Derek, you weren't concerned by this, Penny very much puts herself as the change candidate for genuine, authentic leadership. Do you actually believe, though, that there's an inconsistency in saying I did not say that men should be able to self-ID as a woman, when actually she said it at the dispatch box, no?
Well, I think when I went to the launch that she had last Wednesday, and I think she absolutely nailed it then, so much so that I've got teenage boys or boys that are becoming teenagers, and she's kind of done my job for me when it comes to sex education. I think I'll just stick our launch on. But I think the issue is that we're focusing on a particular issue, which obviously is important, and actually valuing women is a really important thing. And I know lots of constituents of mine who are concerned about where this is going. But I don't see Penny as a problem. I see Penny as the absolute solution. She could be a real champion and inspiration for women to be able to get into that position and bring the country together. I believe she's the only one who can do that, and that would rally and encourage women right across the country.
Yeah, I mean, you might well think that it's a non-issue, but the problem is that, what she's saying now is inconsistent with what she said in the past. But moving on from that, Lee Anderson, is it right for a candidate who hasn't been tested in Cabinet at the highest level, as we're all facing, your constituents will be feeling the pinch, generation-defining inflation? In my lifetime, we've certainly not seen inflation like this before. Is it really right to put an untested candidate forward for the top job?
Well, I'll give you a simple answer to that, Darren. We've already got tested members of the Cabinet in Cabinet, and people are still feeling the pinch. So that argument for me is a little bit of a nonsense. But I will say that all candidates last night did a sterling job. I was impressed by all of them. And like Richard said, Rishi was quite smooth. He sort of took over the debate. I think he actually spoke a little bit too much. I would have liked to have heard more from the other candidates. I thought Kemi did really well. And according to my inbox, which remember is red wall, these are the seats we need to keep at the next election. my inbox was full of people in support of Kemi. A lot of people had not seen or heard of her before, but what they did see and what they did hear last night, they liked. They liked it a lot. It's straight talking. It's honest. It's no nonsense sort of approach. She gives the sort of answers which a lot of politicians try and shy away with. And I think some of my colleagues, some MPs of all parties sometimes forget that the great British public like direct answers to direct questions. She's a no-nonsense type of MP, and that goes down really well in the Red Wall.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Red Wall, Richard Holden, you're there in northwest Durham. As you know, Richard, I was born in Consett, which is in your constituency. Now, Richard, can you genuinely look down the barrel of your camera right now and tell me, in all honesty, that Rishi Sunak could sit in a working men's club in Consett and cut through to vote as there?
I don't need to try and tell you that. He was down at AA Flag's flag manufacturer in Consett just a few weeks ago, interacting with the seamstresses there, chatting to the small business owner about everything that all her accounts, and chatting to her about how he used to do them for his mum when she ran a pharmacy down in Southampton. So he's already been to Consett recently, Darren. In fact, I might share that video with you later on. You can have a look and see how it went.
You'll have to. I'll give you a full review.
You have a review. I think he goes down really well. I think the truth is, Darren, whether it's in Ashfield or St Ives or in Consett, people do want somebody who's going to be straight with them and honest with them about the challenges the country's facing. I agree with Lee on one point. I think Kemi was good last night. I think she was pretty straightforward. I like Kemi. I worked with her when I was in the Department of Education. But I think we're choosing a Prime Minister in a few weeks' time, and we have to have somebody who can really hit the ground running and who's really run one of those big departments of state. And that's why I'm backing Rishi, because I think he's realistic, but he's also got that experience that I think we really need in the issues we're facing at the moment with rising prices.
Yeah, Derek Thomas, I've slightly gone over, but could you just, in a word, if your candidate Penny Mordaunt was to be knocked out of the race, is there anyone that you would be willing to support?
Yeah, there's certainly others there. It probably wouldn't be Rishi. I probably would go for Kemi at the stage, or maybe Liz if it came to Liz in the last two. Perfect.
Well, that was the North West Durham MP Richard Holden on my far right there, the Ashfield MP Lee Anderson on the far left, and which you can't say often, I'll tell you that much, and the St Ives MP Derek Thomas in the middle. Thank you very much to all of you. Now, I'm joined in the studio, I'm delighted to say, by the political commentator and author Joanne Nadler. Joanne, you have, and this is going to sound terribly rude.
No. I know what you're going to say.
One or two leadership elections, right, throughout your career. Do you think this, as I said earlier in that discussion there, generation-defining inflation, right?
Yeah.
Where my generation haven't experienced anything quite like this before. Is it right? Or do you actually think you can draw parallels throughout the recent past? You go back to William Hague after the party had suffered an absolutely enormous defeat. Do you think there are any parallels can be drawn between what's potentially about to happen right now? Because I tell you what, I think the Tories are in for one hell of a shock if they don't get serious on the economic crisis taking hold of the British economy right now.
I think that's exactly right. Of course it is. And I think what was fascinating about last night's debate is that it's very obvious that there isn't really a consensus amongst the candidates as to what they would do about the economy. I mean, the most obvious clash we saw was between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Liz Truss favours effectively extending our debt in order to pump prime now through various tax cuts, some of which I think she's absolutely right to be talking about, corporation tax, for instance, corporation tax cuts, and encouraging growth in the economy in that way and thereby driving down inflation in the longer term. Whereas Rishi Sunak is taking a kind of more fiscally responsible approach in the short term. But I don't think we've heard enough from the other candidates yet. As keen as I am on one of them in particular, Kemi Badenoch, I don't think we've heard enough from them as to how they would approach the sheer scale of the economic challenge facing the party.
Now, I know you're not Mystic Meg, but if you were to predict, I'm not going to ask you who you think is going to be elected, but do you see this getting quite nasty? Because there is a lot of blue-on-blue briefing going on right now. How does this compare to other elections? Does it always get like this?
Well, I mean, I think sometimes everyone gets a bit prissy about this. These are 5 people who are putting themselves up to be Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to lead a political party, then always your ambition is to be Prime Minister. But these people, one of them will be the Prime Minister. And therefore, they have got to be robust enough to put up with scrutiny. Now, whether we call that blue on blue or whether we just approach that in terms of what do these people really believe in? What does their record tell us? Have they done something that they're now saying that they hadn't previously done? I mean, I don't consider that to be blue on blue. I consider that to be actually essential scrutiny.
And were you upset with the inconsistencies that I mentioned about Penny Mordaunt?
Well, I'm a bit bemused by them.
Yeah.
I'm bemused by them because here is somebody who has apparently been a champion for a particular ideology, in which case I'd say to her, fair enough, just come clean and tell us if that's what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that's the authenticity that she purports to be actually giving us. But hey-ho, strange times. Joanne Nadler, thank you. We'll come back to you for plenty more. Now, plenty more to come this afternoon on Real Britain as well. We'll be discussing the Euros, the Women's Euros, that is. England wrapped up an impressive group stage as they comfortably beat Northern Ireland last night. Arlene Foster will be having my guts for garters, I tell you. Having already qualified for the quarter-final. But first, folks, let's have a little look at the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, but some light rain will move into the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. This evening will stay dry across southwest England with some hazy sunshine. Cloud will gradually thicken from the west, and it will be a mild end to the day. Staying dry and bright in southeast England this evening with some late sunshine. It will be a warm evening, and a thin layer of cloud will turn the sunshine hazy at times. A dry end to the day in Wales with a gentle breeze. Sunny skies will gradually cloud over through the evening, but it will still feel warm. Staying dry in the Midlands this evening with sunny skies at first, turning a little cloudier to end the day with a gentle breeze. Skies will be largely cloudy in the northeast this evening, but it should stay dry, feeling cool by the coast with a brisk breeze. Largely cloudy and dry across southern Scotland tonight. However, there could be a few spots of light rain in the west later this evening. Patchy rain will also spread across Northern Ireland this evening. It will feel cool in the rain and under the cloudy skies, although some places may stay dry. Patchy rain will continue in the north tonight, but it will stay dry in the south. A mild night for all, with temperatures in double figures. But that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Now and get the latest news from the world of sport. The Women's Euros are all over the back pages today, and England's cricketers are currently playing a test match against India. Football clubs continue splashing the cash in the transfer market. Newcastle United have done well, and golf legend Tiger Woods said a tearful farewell at the Old Course at St Andrews. A very busy week. So here to give us the lowdown is the senior sports reporter at CBS, Ben Jacobs. Ben, it's good to be with you. So how are the Lionesses faring at Euro 2022, rather? Fill us in.
Incredible is the short answer. They've won Group A already. They haven't conceded a goal. They've scored 14. And in particular, an 8-0 win against Norway was a sensational result against really a very good team. Let's not forget that Norway have got the former Ballon d'Or winner Ada Hegerberg amongst their ranks. So very much no pushover. Guru Reiten was part of that defeated side as well. Beth Mead is scoring goals for fun. And with it being a home tournament, there's just a real buzz about the Lionesses at the moment. They can score from anywhere. They're defensively solid and they're rising to the occasion. And I think a tough win over Austria in the opening game actually helped the Lionesses in many respects to kind of calm their nerves. They only won that game 1-0. And then from there, it's been plain sailing, 8-0 against Norway and 5-0 against Northern Ireland. And the Northern Ireland manager, Kenny Shields, a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, but said it would be, quote, a massive failure if the Lionesses don't go on and win the tournament. But what's really intriguing is that because of how Group B has panned out and Germany have found some form, the quarterfinal for the Lionesses will be against either Spain or Denmark. And that's kind of a winner-takes-all game. It is this evening. So the Lionesses will find out their quarterfinal opponent around about 10 p.m. tonight. And if it's Spain, that's a very difficult quarterfinal, even without Alexia Putellas and Jenny Hermoso, the two Barcelona players who are injured. Spain are also one of the tournament favourites. So that's going to be a test if they draw Spain in the quarterfinals. But confidence is high. Lionesses are scoring goals for fun. They are breaking records and they're not conceding. So all signs point towards them going very far in this tournament.
Good stuff. Now, just to give a little shout out to Northern Ireland women, they only went professional in January, right?
They did, yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, qualifying for the tournament in itself was a fantastic achievement. And to have a taste of the big occasion and play England, not just competitively, but in a friendly as well in the build-up at Wembley Stadium, no less, will allow them to kind of move on and hopefully get stronger. They've got Rachel Furness, who's at Liverpool, who's one of their star players as well. And for large parts of games, even though they didn't pick up points, they were highly competitive. And that's what you want from the Euros, looking at a big gulf result-wise, like England 8, Norway 0, isn't always that reflective. And it's the same with the England 5, Northern Ireland 0 result as well. For large parts of the game, we just saw not too much between the sides. And in the end, it's just about having that clinical nature. And England were doing that for fun. And Northern Ireland had their chances in one or two games, but just weren't able to pick up any points. But they'll take a lot of good learnings from this tournament, and they can be very proud indeed just to have got to the group stage.
You know, Ben, looking at England cricket as well, I'm actually very, very impressed and I'm going to be honest, quite surprised by how well England are doing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the cricket side of things, it's been hit and miss, hasn't it? From the men's point of view, there was the record test chase that saw them beat India, and that is the sort of good side. And then in the T20s and the one-day sense, the results have been a little bit more patchy. They got a decent win on Thursday and skittled India out for just 146, I believe, after putting well over 240 on the board. And that is kind of England at their best, when they're destructive on the bowling side and then red hot with the bat. And when we see opening partnerships that are a bit smaller, which was certainly the case last time out for England between like Roy and Bairstow, they both kind of got in the low 20s up to kind of early 30s. You then need that middle order to really dig in. And Livingston got an important 33, and Ali as well with 47, and Wiley too with just over 40. And that's the kind of depth that England have got when not one star player is able to really kind of pull them through. That middle order doing very, very well. But then when you contrast that, for example, to the one-day game before that, England were bowled out comfortably for only 110, and it was a very drab affair with the bat. And what we're seeing is Roy and Bairstow not always making these fast starts, and Roy got 0 in that game, Bairstow only got 7, Root got 0, Stokes got 0, and it was embarrassing for England. So a little bit inconsistent, to be honest, and they've been switching between Test cricket, T20 and one day pretty quickly, and they haven't quite found a consistent winning formula, but the potential is still there, and hopefully they'll be able to go on and get a victory next time out.
Tiger Woods, tell me about Tiger Woods, because he's had a rocky few years, I think it's safe to say, but he has suggested, implied, that he's played his last round at St Andrews. Is that right?
Yeah, he was very tearful, Tiger Woods. Of course, the Open changes courses, so it won't come around to St Andrews too often, but Tiger Woods missed the cut and was tearful in doing so. It was emotional scenes because he's got such an affinity with the Open and St Andrews. And when he was walking up the 18th hole on Friday, he did say it was, quote, his last time, or it felt like that anyway, playing on the old course in an Open Championship. He's won 2 of his 3 claret jugs at St Andrews, and we know he's battled personal problems and injuries as well. And to even be on that golf course, just being the legend he is with all of that experience was something very, very special, but unfortunately not able to make the cut. We don't say that too often. But then at the top of the leaderboard, it's set up very nicely with Rory McIlroy very much in contention and Lee Westwood there or thereabouts as well. So it's going to be an intriguing weekend over the next 2 days.
Yeah, Ben Jacobs, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. That was the senior sports reporter at CBS, Ben Jacobs. Now, folks, you're with GB News on telly and DAB radio. Before 3 o'clock, we'll be discussing a BBC presenter suggesting England's women's team is too white. But for now, here's a check on the news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Darren, thank you. It's 2:34. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Met Office is advising people to look out for the elderly, children and those with underlying health conditions as the UK is predicted to hit 40 degrees next week. It's issued its first and highest red extreme heat alert for parts of England on Monday and Tuesday, meaning the hot weather will be a possible threat to life. The Cabinet Office will chair an emergency COBRA meeting. The UK Health Security Agency has declared a national emergency. Meanwhile, in Europe, hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes as wildfires sweep across parts of Spain, France and Portugal. More than 1,000 firefighters, supported by helicopters, have been battling fires all week as officials in Europe issued health warnings for the heatwave in the coming days. The final 5 Conservative leader candidates have faced the first of 3 live television debates, clashing over tax cuts and gender politics. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak defended his economic policies, calling Foreign Secretary Liz Truss's plans a fairy tale. Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch and International Trade Secretary Penny Mordaunt came to blows over trans issues, whilst Tom Tugendhat, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, said trust in the Tory party has been collapsing. Protesters in Sri Lanka have said they're looking forward to a new president to get the country out of its current economic crisis. This after they stormed President Rajapaksa's home and offices, forcing him to resign and flee to Singapore. Sri Lanka's parliament has started to elect a new president. The Prime Minister of the country, who's also faced calls to resign, is standing in the interim. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Darren will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest, uncivilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. Now, a new study has concluded that mindfulness lessons in schools are designed to improve pupils' mental health and well-being. I'm asking, is this a waste of time and no better than what schools are already doing for mental health? But with young people, more and more of them being put on antidepressants than ever before, do we actually need to do more to improve their mental health and well-being? Well, joining me now to break down this study is the Editor-in-Chief of the Good Schools Guide and Conservative peer, Lord Ralph Lucas. Lord Lucas, thank you very much for your time. Could you briefly just explain to us what this mindfulness thing is? Because it just sounds sort of quite nebulous, really, doesn't it?
It's a very trendy thing. It's that you, in the course that I had a go at, you were supposed to spend 15 minutes eating one bite of chocolate and to really appreciate every aspect of what you were doing. And this is supposed to increase your ability when under stress to step back from that stress and reassess things and get your feet back firmly on the ground. And it may or may not work for some adults, but these studies show absolutely conclusively that it does not work in schools.
Yes, I mean, the study found that most pupils were not interested in the technique, and they actually described it as pretty boring. So how on earth, you know, what's the alternative basically to this? It could be, I mean, would you accept the premise of the argument that there is a mental health crisis? I know we use that word, we bandy it about like you wouldn't believe, but is there a crisis of mental health in our schools today?
No, I don't think particularly. I think certainly COVID made mental health worse. And it is important to pay attention to mental health in schools because some really serious problems can show themselves in early and allow you to get at them early. A school that has a really good mental health support side, someone you can go and talk to, teachers who know to send you in that direction, is something absolutely to look out for. I mean, any kid can have mental health problems. So. But this is an ordinary aspect of growing up, but we do need help with it. So I really like schools that are strong on this, but to call it a crisis, no. It's something that's really important. And no, we don't know how to deal better with it. We do. There are some people who claim to have found an answer. So far, none of them have panned out. We know how to do well. We know that good teacher attention, really good care from teachers who know and relate to the students can make a big difference.
So then overall, I think many of my viewers watching us in this conversation right now will be of the view that far too often we're wrapping kids up in cotton wool, protecting them from, you know, online harms and speech and debate and all of these other things. And actually, there's a real concern that you know, kids in the likes of China, your competitors on the global marketplace and in other areas as well, let's not forget, they won't be doing that with their children. Do you actually have concerns that the next generation of kids are frankly going to be wrapped up so much in cotton wool that going out into the real world will be absolutely terrifying? Of course you're going to have mental health problems if you haven't been allowed to go through, as you rightly describe, what is normal adolescence.
Yes, I entirely agree with you, and it's one of the big emerging things over the last 3 years is that the skill that employers most want from their young recruits is resilience, the ability to deal with a problem and be hurt by it and come out the other side. And it's really important that schools teach that, to have a level of support in doing that. I don't want kids to go through what I went through at school, where you hit these problems and you're on your own. But to have these problems and find a way through them and to learn that you can is really important.
It's about, I'm all for, you know, giving kids techniques to actually overcome these issues and actually help them, you know, get on and progress in life. But I do worry that we're forgetting the fundamentals of education, what education is there to do, which is to allow people to grow up, go out into society and make something of their lives. I feel like we're forgetting that these days and just allowing, well, in certain respects, actually, not allowing kids to be kids, because I think there is a real politicisation of much of the activism that comes into our schools far too often. But the way in which we inoculate children almost to be ready for the big bad world, I feel like that is sorely missing from education today.
I think you're dead right, and we need to find a way to get it back. I mean, I think we've learned in the last 20 years that washing everything in disinfectant means that you're much more likely to get diseases because you never get the immunity. And the same sort of thing applies. No, you've got to put kids in a position where they can fall out of a tree and break their arm. You've got to be a bit of danger in the world. You've got to go through a hard time and learn that you can deal with it. If you come out, once you're out in the world and you haven't got those skills, you're at a huge disadvantage.
Can I ask you, a lot of my viewers care about the reintroduction of grammar schools, because obviously there's a ban by Tony Blair. Do you actually think, Boris Johnson mentioned this, and obviously he's no longer going to be Prime Minister in the coming months, but if the Tory candidates, whoever that might be, that does take the top job, and were introduced grammar schools, how would you feel about that?
I think the key is to introduce really good schools for children who cannot take academic work, to do what the Germans do and have technical high schools where kids like that can really find an education that suits them and is really fulfilling. And then I think for the rest of the kids, which is probably about 80%, those in the bottom half of that really enjoy being in a school which has the top half. They're inspired by it. They can see they're drawn upwards by being educated with the really bright kids. So no, I'm not for grammar schools. I do the other end. I make really good schools for the kids who are not academic.
OK, Lord Lucas, we're going to have to end it there. I did want to ask you about some schools actually saying to kids, you can't wear shorts, but you can wear a skirt because of the hot weather that we're having. Frankly, amazing, incredible times that we're living through. But there we are. That was the Editor-in-Chief of the Good Schools Guide, Lord Rafe Lucas. Thank you for your time. Now, the Inverness Highland Games return this weekend after a 2-year break because of the pandemic. The event at Buck Park will include Highland dancers, athletes, pipers and the world's strongest man. Our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, is there for us now. Hiya, Davy. How's it looking?
Yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant here, Darren. Absolutely fantastic. What a great day we've had. We've even had the weather as well, which is not normally that great in the Highlands of Scotland, but we've been very, very blessed with that. We've got a lot of running races going on over my shoulder at the moment, so we've a lot of track events. We've had hammer throwing, we've had shot put, We've got Highland dancing over in that end. We've got the bagpipes playing as well in the background further away. It's just been a brilliant day, and as you say, world's strongest man, Tom Stoltman, who spoke to us earlier on GB News. Caught up with him earlier to have a quick chat about obviously his great title, being the world's strongest man, and obviously how delighted he was to be here at the Highland Games in Inverness after a 2-year break. So it's been absolutely fantastic, really great day. Lots of families here enjoying the weather and enjoying the event.
People are there, Davey, because to my viewers watching on telly, it looks quite sparse right now. Is it all over?
No, there's still some to go. I just think the angle that the camera's at, there is people a lot way to my left, but yeah, there's just not so many sitting in the stand. You have to understand it's quite a big park, so this is just one part of it. So there is actually more and more people here, more and more people doing things further down as well. Lots of people queuing as well to get a picture and an autograph with Tom Stoltman as well. So the queue is getting bigger by the second. So if you are anyone near here, make sure you get down and get you into that queue pretty soon, because you'll need to. But it was great to speak to Tom Stoltman earlier. Absolutely brilliant to get him on GB News and taking his time out to speak to us. But yeah, just a great day for families, great day for people to enjoy, and so many different events and so many different things to see and do.
So Howie, then, Davey, are you going to be asking the world's strongest man for an arm wrestle?
Well, I actually got a picture with him earlier on. I have to say, when I interviewed him, I did get a wee selfie with Tom. You know, I thought maybe I could put it up on Facebook or on Twitter and say, look, I've got security with me, should you think of approaching me?
And do you actually think numbers are, of course you've mentioned that it hasn't been on for the last 2 years because of the lockdowns, but do you actually reckon, as far as people feeling the pinch right now, I imagine, you know, just like all 4 constituent parts of the United Kingdom, people in Inverness may well be feeling the pinch. It's quite a drive for some people, isn't it? Are you feeling the fact that people aren't as well off, frankly, as they were 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think that's the case right across Scotland as well. You know, people are struggling. We've got, you know, fuel prices going through the roof. I think the other day was 189.9 I paid, which is scandalous. And obviously the fuel bills are going up, the heating and gas are going up as well. So it's very, very difficult for everyone, you know, and people are struggling. And I suppose the things that people probably look to cut out are these little luxuries in life, you know, in terms of going out for a meal, going out for a drink with family and friends. These are probably the first things to go for most people, simply because they simply can't afford them.
Yeah, Davey, it's really sad. I mean, people saying, look, I used to fill up my car 40 quid, now it's over 100. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. But Davey Donaldson, we'll leave it there. Have a cracking time, and I'll get you to fill me in later. GB News' Scotland reporter. Cheers very much. Now, folks, it's 2:49, and during coverage of Women's Euro 2022 this week, BBC reporter Ailey Barber criticised the England team for its purported lack of diversity following their record-breaking 8-0 win over Norway. Apparently, some people just can't be happy. Let's have a listen to what she said.
Kelly mentioned it was an historic 8-goal victory for England last night as the Lionesses secured their place in the quarter-finals. But all starting 11 players and the 5 substitutes that came onto the pitch were all white. And that does point towards a lack of diversity in the women's game in England. And it's something that Alex Scott has been investigating.
Now, many of you at home have been asking me, Darren, what on God's earth has the BBC got against white people? I mean, surely they're not suggesting that the Lionesses have been selected because they're not talented, instead it's selected on their skin colour. What happened to this idea that you pick the best sports people for the game? Well, joining me to discuss is the independent peer and former Labour MP, Baroness Kate Hoey. Now, she took to Twitter to criticise these comments, labelling them, in frank terms, as pathetic. And Kate joins me on the phone this afternoon. Kate, thank you very much for your time. On Twitter, you did say these comments were pathetic. Why do you reckon that? And do you think this smacks of the BBC being completely out of touch? They're pandering to whackery and wokery.
Well, good afternoon. I was very, very surprised at a BBC sports journalist, a woman sports journalist, actually saying what she said. I mean, it really was not something that I thought any BBC sports journalist would have said, but particularly after the Lionesses had just had such a great victory. And it really did seem to me that she had overstretched the mark, even if she personally thought that. And it was a ridiculous thing to think about because, as you rightly say, most people feel that the best people should be picked for teams. And England had done extremely well. And over the last 10 or 20 years, the women's football has grown enormously right throughout the country. And indeed, I was, delighted to see Northern Ireland in the last competing for the first time ever, even though they lost 5-0 to England. It was still a great event. So I just think the BBC really should be looking at what on earth they were playing at.
Yeah, because Kate, it just strikes me and you're a former sports minister, right? You recognise the way in which this has changed, the focus, instead of focusing on the game, and as you say, we're not celebrating things like Northern Ireland going professional, Kate. We're instead talking about the colour of players on the pitch. Surely this move away from saying, let's focus on people's talents and abilities and content of their characters, and instead focusing exclusively on the colour of people's skins, is this not going backwards, not forwards?
Well, I think it is. I mean, sport unites people. It brings people together. Certainly when I was sports minister, you never even thought of the fact that there were some of our teams which were predominantly black. Some of our best athletes are from a black community, and sometimes we had all black women's teams and all black men's teams. I mean, it really was a ridiculous thing to say. And I think particularly so because Sue Campbell, who is the Football Association's women, one of the people within the Football Association who've really done so much to make sure that more young women are getting involved in football from all backgrounds. And it just seems so ridiculous that having seen the changes and the good things that are happening. I mean, I remember when I was sports minister going to watch an England football match, and I think there was myself and about another 100 spectators. That's what's changed in quite a relatively short time. So yes, and I think the BBC is just being pathetic, as I said. I couldn't think of a better word really than pathetic. And it does need people to speak out about this. And I think the people who would be most upset probably would be the women in the England team, the Lionesses, who, how does that make them feel?
Well, indeed, exactly. And the miserablest, that's what they are, Kate. But former Labour MP Kate Hoey there, thank you very much for your time today. I'm joined, of course, in the studio by the political commentator and author Joanne Nadler. Joanne, does it strike you that the BBC are moving in a more sort of activist direction, where these sort of comments are becoming, instead of being few and far between, much more regular?
Well, I think certain parts of the BBC, certainly so. I think certain parts of their website, and I think if you listen to Radio 4, it does seem to have an editorial line, which is very much on the liberal left, if not the left, predominantly. But actually, I don't totally agree with you about the treatment of this story, because I think it's fair enough to actually ask about disparities. The question is, why is there a disparity? Has something happened in the structure of women's football that has held back black or ethnic players? And I understand that there was an incident some time ago of a previous manager having to be sacked because he did make racially discriminatory comments. And then has that, for instance, put young black girls off from going into football? I mean, in a very small way, I manage my son's five-a-side team, and if I can just say, they won the league yesterday.
Oh, well done.
But, I go down there every Friday night. I see all the young boys playing football of all different colours, but the girls tend to play netball. So is there a thing about the pipeline as well? So all I'm saying is I think it's legitimate to ask the question. It may not have been the right timing for the BBC to have done that, given it came off the back of a victory that needed to be celebrated. But I don't think it's unreasonable to say, look at male football, look at the British football, the England football team, and what a fantastic, advertisement they are for a multicultural country, multiracial country. And if that's not reflected in the women's team, is there something that's holding that back from happening, or is it just that, it hasn't naturally come through the pipeline yet?
Perfect. Well, Joanne Nadler offering a different point of view, which we like on this channel. But I tell you what, we're going to get you as manager of the England's team. That's what we need, clearly, winning leagues there. Now, you're watching Real Britain, folks, with me, Darren Grimes. We're going to take a look now at the weather. I'll be back after this short break.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, but some light rain will move into the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. This evening will stay dry across southwest England with some hazy sunshine. Cloud will gradually thicken from the west, and it will be a mild end to the day. Staying dry and bright in southeast England this evening with some late sunshine. It will be a warm evening, and a thin layer of cloud will turn the sunshine hazy at times. A dry end to the day in Wales with a gentle breeze. Sunny skies will gradually cloud over through the evening, but it will still feel warm. Staying dry in the Midlands this evening with sunny skies at first, turning a little cloudier to end the day with a gentle breeze. Skies will be largely cloudy in the northeast this evening, but it should stay dry, feeling cool by the coast with a brisk breeze. Largely cloudy and dry across southern Scotland tonight. However, there could be a few spots of light rain in the west later this evening. Patchy rain will also spread across Northern Ireland this evening. It will feel cool in the rain and under the cloudy skies, although some places may stay dry. Patchy rain will continue in the north tonight, but it will stay dry in the south. A mild night for all, with temperatures in double figures. But that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome. This is Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes, on telly, DAB and online. Today we'll be discussing the threat of more strike action, this time from civil servants. We're going to be discussing the vape market. Could that be encouraging children to pick up these sweet-flavoured devices? And should the Tories continue to pursue net zero by 2050? Conservative leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch says she may well scrap it if given the keys to number 10. I'll be joined in the studio throughout the show even, by the political commentator and author Joanne Nadler. But first, folks, here's the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Darren, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 3. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Cabinet Office is to chair an emergency COBRA meeting as the UK could hit a record high temperature of 40 degrees next week. The Met Office has issued its first and highest red extreme heat alert for parts of England on Monday and Tuesday, meaning the hot weather will be a possible threat to life. Some schools will close across the country, and the NHS is warning the heat wave will be a nightmare for patients and staff. The UK Health Security Agency has declared a national emergency. Jim Dale, senior meteorologist at British Weather Services, says red warning is there for a good reason.
I don't think what's happened in the recent past has been particularly, in terms of what we've received in the UK, has been particularly sort of attached to say, oh, that's climate change. I actually think this one is, without doubt. This is why it's the crossroads. This is why it's serious. 40 degrees is not a figure to be, put under the carpet and say, well, that's fine, we'll live with that, because it isn't, because it will actually kill people.
Meanwhile, in Europe, hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes as wildfires sweep across parts of Spain, France and Portugal. More than 1,000 firefighters, supported by helicopters, have been battling fires all week as officials in Europe issued health warnings for the heatwave in the coming days. Some 400 residents have so far been evacuated in the Malaga region of Spain, with temperatures expected to hit over 40 degrees over the next few days. The final 5 Conservative leader candidates have faced the first of 3 live television debates, clashing over tax cuts and gender politics. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak defended his economic policies, calling Foreign Secretary Liz Truss's plans a fairy tale. Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch and International Trade Secretary Penny Mordaunt came to blows over trans issues, whilst Tom Tugendhat, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, said trust in the Tory party has been collapsing. Speaking to GB News earlier, he said he thought the debate went well.
I thought Rishi was all over the detail. I thought Kemi made her points extremely clearly. I thought it was perfectly clear that Penny knew what she was on about and was explaining her policies and her issues well. And Liz made a very good case for why she was so important in government for the last 10 years. I think, frankly, I think that demonstrates a huge depth of talent in the Conservative Party and why Keir Starmer should be very worried.
Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak says the Conservative candidates are all on the same side.
Now, I've got enormous respect and admiration for all of my colleagues who are standing to be leader, and it's right that we have passionate debate about these issues. And when this election is over, we have to remember we're all part of the same Conservative team, the same Conservative family, and we're going to come together and serve the British people.
President Joe Biden says the US will remain an active and engaged partner in the Middle East. In his first visit to the region since becoming president, he held a summit with 6 Gulf states, plus Egypt, Jordan and Iraq. He also held discussions with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, which has drawn criticism in the US. Biden had promised to make Saudi Arabia a pariah on the global stage over the murder of Washington Post journalist and Saudi Arabia critic Jamal Khashoggi in 2018.
The United States is invested in building a positive future in the region in partnership with all of you, and the United States is not going anywhere. This is a table full of problem solvers. There's a lot of good we can do if we do it together. Thank you again for inviting me.
Protesters in Sri Lanka have said they're looking forward to a new president to get the country out of its current economic crisis. It's after they stormed President Rajapaksa's home and offices, forcing him to resign and flee to Singapore. Sri Lanka's parliament has started to elect a new president. The Prime Minister of the country, who's also faced calls to resign, is standing in the interim. It's as a shipment of fuel has arrived to provide some relief to the crisis-hit nation. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Darren.
Welcome to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. Here's what's coming up on the show. Strikes and more strikes. It's starting to feel, I felt like Maggie Thatcher there. Civil servants will now vote on national strike action over their pay, pensions and government plans to cut 91,000 jobs. The boss of the Public and Commercial Services Union says their members are facing an unprecedented living cost of living crisis. But aren't we all, folks? That's what I'm asking today. The Duchess of Cornwall has shown her funny side. At her 75th birthday bash, she addressed the crowd and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm allowed to call you that." Well, quite. Is this what you would like to see from the royals? A bit of Prince Philip humour? Now, trading standards as well in England and Wales are warning that the market has been flooded by unsafe disposable vapes that are aimed at kids, with the sweet-smelling devices growing in popularity, especially amongst teenagers. We'll be getting to the bottom of just how dangerous they are before 4 p.m. That's what we're talking about for the next hour. I would absolutely love to know your thoughts on civil servants striking. Would you just say, well, you can be struck off? Or would you actually support them? Tweet me at GBNews or email me on gbviews@gbnews.uk. Watch us on YouTube and don't forget Facebook. Loads of fantastic content on our page. Cheers very much. So there's been yet more misery for commuters coming later this month after the Train Drivers Union ASLEF announced its members would walk out on Saturday 30th of July. A total of 5,500 staff are set to strike after talks broke down over pay, with the union seeking wages to keep pace with the rising cost of living. Wouldn't we all like those kind of pay increases? RMT members are also going to strike on the 27th of July, but it's not just on the railways. The latest threat of strike action comes from civil servants as the Public and Commercial Services Union announces it will ballot members for strike action over pay and proposed job cuts at the end of September. The union's demands include a 10% pay rise, an hourly wage of at least 15 quid an hour, cuts to pension, no cuts, I'm assuming that is, to pension contributions, and no further cuts to redundancy terms and a job security agreement. But with everyone feeling the pinch, right, we're all in the same boat with this cost of living crisis, generation defining. Are civil servants right to call for a big bump in their pay packets? Or frankly, folks, are they being a little bit selfish? Well, to join me in this debate, I'm with the head of media campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, Danielle Boxall, and the former Labour media advisor and writer, Scarlett Maguire. Scarlett, I'm going to start with you. I assume you're absolutely seething at the idea that civil servants are being selfish.
Well, I mean, everybody has the right to strike. It's a basic right in Britain. And if the civil servants feel that their pay is not keeping up with inflation, which it certainly isn't. And also, I do think that this government has not behaved well to them, and they've forever criticised them. And everybody has a right to say enough is enough. I'm withdrawing my labour, and that's all that's happening. I mean, I don't understand why there's a fuss about it and why civil servants are expected to go on going into work when so many ministers are rude about them.
But Scarlett, is it the case that civil servants have been going into work? Because, I mean, a hell of a lot have continued this working from home hybrid, haven't they?
Well, yeah, but I mean, working from home during the pandemic, I had two young women, one of whom was my daughter, living with me, working from home. They worked from 9:30 till 5:30, never a break. I had to cook them supper every night because they were so exhausted. Working from home is just another way of working. And actually, I mean, I work from home. I'm working from home at this minute. I find it a very efficient way to work. And then I go into places like yours when I have to. I mean, I think this myth that working from home isn't really working is just, I mean, I know Jacob Rees-Mogg likes it, but then he also, you know, likes to lie down on the green benches. I mean, I think that we have to get used to, and it's not just the civil service, a lot of private sector places work hybrid working.
Danielle, a lot of my viewers will be saying, look, civil servants sat around in their boxer shorts watching Loose Women or whatever else. I don't want to pay for that. And they frankly find it an outrage that the civil servants are threatening to strike. Is that a fair caricature of what's happening here?
Yeah, well, I agree. Of course, everybody has the right to strike. But I think what is disappointing is that after 2 years of essentially a shutdown of our economy and various lockdowns and things, that civil servants have said that, well, we're not going to carry on. We're going to leave the workforce in this sort of pay dispute. When there are plenty of people out there, not just civil servants. There's people in the private sector that are struggling with the cost of living too. So they're not the only ones that are struggling with the cost of living crisis at the moment. I mean, this thing about working from home, it's not really the working from home thing that is a problem for me. If civil servants do want to work from home, then they can. But I don't think that the taxpayer should be funding these massive empty buildings in Whitehall whilst civil servants aren't coming in. I think, it should be a one or the other thing. Either you're coming in or you're working from home. And the size of these departments is massively reduced to save money and actually help people with the cost of living crisis by saving that money from Whitehall budgets.
And Danielle, is it your view, and I don't wish to put words into your mouth, you're perfectly capable of forming them yourself, but is it your view that actually it's pretty rich of civil servants who've had their jobs protected since the pandemic started, since the lockdown strategy was brought in, and a lot of people out of work potentially at the moment may well be looking at civil servants who've had a pretty cushy time during that lockdown? They might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, this just isn't fair.
Yeah, and there are a lot of perks for working in the public sector, of course. It's not just that you might get higher pay, you also get a lot more generous annual leave entitlement, you get a much generous pension package, maternity leave is a lot more generous in the public sector as well. So there are definitely benefits to working in the public sector that you don't see in the private sector at all these days. And I think people think, well, how comes they're getting all this, job security and working from home and, all this sort of extra perks for working in the public sector that the private sector just doesn't exist anymore. And, there is a real disparity there. And I think, bringing some of those things in line would save a lot of money. For example, capping annual leave entitlements to be in line with the private sector at 25 days. 25 days is still a lot of time to take off. That's excluding bank holidays as well. So that is a lot of time that people could be taking off. But it would save a lot of money for the taxpayer. That would save about £3 billion a year, which I know it doesn't seem like a lot in the run of things, but it all adds up, and this is all money that could be going back to taxpayers and could be going back into people's pockets to help them with the cost of living crisis.
So, Scarlett, then, are you the guardian of this cushy lifestyle that Danielle speaks about there?
I don't think Danielle is pretending it's a cushy lifestyle. And I'd like to say that a lot of civil servants worked their butts off during the COVID crisis, that it wasn't easy. I mean, Boris Johnson said that Number 10 deserved the drinks parties because they were working hard. Well, so were civil servants. I mean, think of the people in the Treasury who delivered furlough, right? Think of how many civil servants had to work incredibly hard to get things done when we were in crisis, and all they get is criticism after criticism. The reason Brexit isn't working is because the civil servants aren't working. Education, they're called the blob. I mean, this government is so rude about civil servants. And, when it comes to it, let's cut 90,000 because that's easy. It's an easy way of saving money. So it's not nice being a civil servant. You're always under attack.
Danielle, do you think the state is at risk of becoming too big? Are these public service institutions, the blob, as it's sometimes called, are they re-establishing the power and the influence that they had in the 70s and 80s? Are we basically, about to face a pretty unruly, frankly, period of distress from the ranks of the civil service?
Well, I do think the state is getting quite large. I mean, since 2015, we've seen about a 25% increase in the size of the civil service. I mean, it's now approaching 500,000 people, 500,000 people working in the civil service, which compared to other countries is really quite substantial. In Singapore, it's about 90,000. And in Canada, I think it's about 250,000. So compared to other countries, I do think we have quite a large civil service and it could be cut. I mean, I don't agree that politicians are doing this just because it's an easy way to save money. I mean, the last thing politicians want to do is cut jobs and make people lose their jobs. But I do think the growth in the civil service is definitely unsustainable, and I'm pleased that the government is looking to rolling back the civil service and reducing those numbers, because we've seen civil servants coming in to deal with specific events like Brexit and COVID, and those. Luckily, they don't really apply to us anymore. So I think those jobs could be rolled back, and that could all save people money.
Scarlett, you must be absolutely delighted at the prospect of Rishi Sunak getting into number 10, given that he's been the most successful socialist chancellor of this century.
I am nearly speechless at Rishi Sunak being called a socialist, right? It's quite clear that Rishi Sunak on finances is basically Thatcherite, which I think he would like that description. But actually, what he feels, I mean, as he said last night, is sometimes you have to put money in places, and what he's done is he's put money in the health service. I am quite happy for him to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, because I think he'll be very, very easy to beat. But that's what I feel about all of them.
All right, we'll leave it there. That was Danielle Boxall from the Taxpayers Alliance and the former Labour media advisor and writer, Scarlett Maguire. Thank you very much to the two of you. Now, of course, I'm joined in the studio today by the political commentator and author Joanne Nadler. Joanne, on the civil service, is it fair to say, look, you've had a pretty easy time of it over the past few years. We cannot be giving you massive pay increases at a time when we're asking the rest of the country, or seeing the rest of the country having to really tighten their belts?
Well, I mean, of course it's fair, because it's essential. I mean, I frankly, if Scarlett is sort of the best advocate for the case for the civil service, then I'm concerned for them, and I hope she now goes and has a bit of a lie down after the exhausted bit of work she's done sitting in a chair. I work from home, and I've always felt, that I'm extremely privileged to be able to do that, because it is less stressful than so many people who are working in the private sector, delivering things to us, working in shops, working in factories, doing those jobs which weren't conveniently closed down during COVID because they were essential. And these are people who, quite frankly, I feel more sympathetic towards if they're worried about, the cost of living. Now, that's not to say that civil servants aren't also facing stresses on their budgets. Of course they are. We're in extraordinary times at the moment. But the question is this going to help them going on strike, or is it just self-defeating? It's not good for the economy as a whole. It's going to slow the economy down. It's going to make it less dynamic. If we don't have the growth, then nobody's going to end up with improvements in their pay packets.
Yeah, and I do think that expansion of the state that Danielle was talking about there, that is a real phenomenon. And I think, actually, that is acting as a drag on the overall economy.
Yes, because you've got less of a productive sector. You've got more call on resources that need to be allocated to be paid for, and you've got less of a productive sector in the economy. We do have a problem with productivity in Britain, and I want to hear from the candidates in the leadership race as to how they're going to address that.
Well, indeed. And just finally, on that point, I mentioned Rishi Sunak there being the most, and I was slightly joking just to wind up Scarlett, I'm not going to lie, the most successful socialist chancellor of this century. Do you think, Scarlett replied there saying he's a Thatcherite, do you think that's fair for a man who's raised taxes and said, no way, Jose, you ain't getting tax cuts anytime soon?
I think a lot of people are making claims to being Thatcherites at the moment. And in some senses, I think he's entitled to do that, because he is trying to stress that you cannot spend what you're not earning, and therefore, and that you can't borrow yourself out of a crisis, borrow your way out of a crisis. So I don't think it's inaccurate for him to make that claim, but I don't think it's the full story.
Yeah, well, indeed. We'll leave it there. We'll be speaking to you in the not-too-distant future, Joanne. Thank you very much for your time. Plenty more to come this afternoon, folks, on Real Britain. Next, we're going to be discussing the Duchess of Sussex. She's been loose-lipped, surprise, surprise, while making a number of comments, including a dig at the woke brigade. But I'll be discussing with the royal biographer Angela Levin more on that. But first, folks, let's have a little look at the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, but some light rain will move into the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. This evening will stay dry across southwest England with some hazy sunshine. Cloud will gradually thicken from the west, and it will be a mild end to the day. Staying dry and bright in southeast England this evening with some late sunshine. It will be a warm evening, and a thin layer of cloud will turn the sunshine hazy at times. A dry end to the day in Wales with a gentle breeze. Sunny skies will gradually cloud over through the evening, but it will still feel warm. Staying dry in the Midlands this evening with sunny skies at first, turning a little cloudier to end the day with a gentle breeze. Skies will be largely cloudy in the northeast this evening, but it should stay dry, feeling cool by the coast with a brisk breeze. Largely cloudy and dry across southern Scotland tonight. However, there could be a few spots of light rain in the west later this evening. Patchy rain will also spread across Northern Ireland this evening. It will feel cool in the rain and under the cloudy skies, although some places may stay dry. Patchy rain will continue in the north tonight, but it will stay dry in the south. A mild night for all, with temperatures in double figures. But that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable, and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Welcome back to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. Cheers very much for your company. I want to talk to you about the Duchess of Cornwall, who's made a remark not too different from that I imagine the late and great Duke of Edinburgh would have made. So the Duchess of Cornwall, she appeared to poke at the so-called Woke Brigade while attending a lunch on Monday to celebrate her 75th birthday, and she began her speech with this joke.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm allowed to call you that,
So the joke, which you've heard there, drew laughter from those attending. It was described as being in the keeping with the irreverent spirit of the lunch by Clarence House. Now, is this the type of behaviour we want to see from our royal family? Well, here to tell us more is the royal commentator Angela Levin, and we've also got Joanne Nadler there in the studio. Angela, you're writing a book on the Duchess of Cornwall. Is this sort of thing, this banter, is this what she's like?
Yeah, it's a biography of her, which will be out in the autumn. Yes, she usually cracks a joke at the beginning of any occasion to sort of break the ice. Very much, it's about the only thing she probably has in common with Harry at the moment, is Harry did that too. It always do some sort of funny thing, often self-deprecating, to make people laugh. I remember going with her once to a rape centre, which obviously wasn't going to be easy, and the girls weren't interested in her initially at all. They were all obviously very damaged, and she climbed through a back window so that nobody would know she was there. And at the time, she said there was a minister there, a home minister, and she was much taller than her, and she looked at her and she looked at the young ladies and she said, "Do you think I should go on tiptoe or climb on a stool?" And they all collapsed with laughter. So she broke a very tense time by sort of self-deprecating. She did it again when she invited a lot of show business people round to Clarence House, where she lives, her London home, where she lives with Prince Charles. And she introduced the actress who was playing her in The Crown as her, we call her a fictional alter ego. So it didn't matter if she dropped off the plot because she would take over from her. And this woman had portrayed Camilla as being really quite nasty. But there again, it was her, don't show any nasty signs, welcome people. And the whole room collapsed with laughter. So this is a habit rather than actually being aggressive about wokeism or anything else.
Yes. Joanne, on that point, on the wokeism point, am I reading too much into this? Because actually that is how a lot of my viewers feel, right? That they can't actually say something like ladies and gentlemen these days, that we are getting into the territory of wackery and wokery being quite pervasive in all of our lives. Has Camilla tapped into that, or am I reading too much into this?
Well, I think what she showed was a real nice sort of lightness of touch. And the way she handled it was the way that I think a lot of people would handle it in a similar situation. But I think what I would say is I think people should just say it. Say, ladies and gentlemen, say men and women, and don't be apologetic about it. So to the extent that she began to be slightly apologetic about it, even in a jokey sort of way, she was inadvertently, I think, pandering to this sort of spread of this gender ideology. So just get on and do it and say it, and don't give in to the intimidation.
Angela, do you think Her Majesty the Queen would have found that joke funny?
I expect she would, actually. The Queen has a very, very good sense of humour, and she and Camilla laugh a great deal together. And during the pandemic, they used to Zoom to each other and make each other laugh. I think the Queen has, but she doesn't show it necessarily in the same way, but she would have found it hilarious, I'm quite sure.
And how much did this remind you of, as I say, the late and great Duke of Edinburgh?
I think that's spot on, but she has, he is her role model and he thinks very highly of him. And she just said the other day that she wants to follow the way he was looking after the Queen. She would want to follow the way looking after Prince Charles. And the thing was to look up, look out, speak less and get on with doing the job. And that, of course, is exactly what Prince Philip did, and this is what she wants to do too. No messing about, getting on with it.
Joanne, do you worry? Some people on the on the internet who say they're literally shaking over this and all of this ridiculous hyperbole. Do you actually think that
Are they literally shaking?
Literally shaking, yeah. The word literally is used, well, ironically, not literally, but there we are. Now, I'm wondering, do you actually think the royal family making these sort of jokes, is that at risk of politicisation, as these people would argue indeed?
Well, I mean, I return to my first point in a way. I think it should just be said in a very naturalistic way. It shouldn't be then referred to as being anything extraordinary or untoward. We've been in the grip of something of an ideological push from the social justice warriors. And I think we shouldn't always pander to it or concede it. We should just live our lives, our free lives, all equal before the law in this country. And that is the way, perhaps, through this dilemma. I think that she did the right thing in those circumstances, but in future she should just say it and not apologise for it.
Well, indeed. We'll leave it there, folks. But that was the royal commentator Angela Levin, who is, of course, writing a book on the Duchess of Cornwall, which will be out this autumn. Thank you, Angela, for your time, and, of course, Joanne Nadler in the studio. Now, next up, folks, we're going to be, you're of course with GB News on telly and DAB radio, but next up we're going to be discussing vaping, those e-cigarette thingy-mabobs. Doctors are warning that kids are actually at risk from this vaping phenomenon, and more should be done to protect them from illegal and unregulated products that contain high levels of nicotine. Is this all nanny state nonsense or a serious problem? We'll find out. But now, here's a check on the news headlines with the lovely Tamsin Roberts.
Darren, thank you, and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 3:32. The Met Office is advising people to look out for the elderly, children and those with underlying health conditions, as the UK is predicted to hit 40 degrees next week. It's issued its first and highest red extreme heat alert for parts of England on Monday and Tuesday, meaning the hot weather will be a possible threat to life. The Cabinet Office will chair an emergency COBRA meeting today, as the UK Health Security Agency has declared a national emergency. Meanwhile, in Europe, hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes as wildfires sweep across parts of Spain, France and Portugal. More than 1,000 firefighters, supported by helicopters, have been battling fires all week as officials in Europe issued health warnings for the heatwave in the coming days. The final 5 Conservative leader candidates have faced the first of 3 live television debates, clashing over tax cuts and gender politics. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak defended his economic policies, calling Foreign Secretary Liz Truss's plans a fairy tale. Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch and International Trade Secretary Penny Mordaunt came to blows over trans issues, whilst Tom Tugendhat, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, said trust in the Tory party has been collapsing. Protesters in Sri Lanka have said they're looking forward to a new president to get the country out of its current economic crisis. It's after they stormed the home and offices of President Rajapaksa, forcing him to resign and flee to Singapore. Sri Lanka's parliament has started to elect a new president. The Prime Minister of the country, who's also faced calls to resign, is standing in the interim. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Darren will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. I want to talk to you now about trading standards in England and Wales, claiming that the vaping market, that's those e-cigarette thingy-mabobs, is being flooded by unsafe, disposable products that are actually, they argue, aimed at children, with these sweet-smelling devices growing in popularity, especially amongst teenagers. Now, the report has found, even though it's illegal, that several shops have been selling these vapes to children, with thousands of counterfeit and unregulated devices already been seized this year. So I'm asking, how big a cause for concern is this? Well, I'm joined by John Dunn, the Director General of the Vaping Industry Association, the GP, Dr. Mo Kaki, and vapor Jacob Jacob, I cannot tell me how I say your surname. I beg your pardon.
It's Kostreza.
Perfect, Kostreza. I like it a lot. Now, Jacob, I'll start with you. What do you like about these products? Were you a smoker beforehand? Has it gotten you off cigarettes?
Well, I started off with the vape itself. It's just, they are marketed as bright colours with exotic flavours, which are very appealing to not just adults, but kids as well. It all starts off, your mate just gives you, oh, try this. You have your first puff, you get your little nicotine buzz, your little head rush, and then, which is quite relaxing, it's quite calming. But then in order to get that again, you have to slowly increase your intake. And then eventually your tolerance gets to a point where you're no longer enjoying yourselves. You start getting nausea. Occasionally you can get vomiting. And it just becomes an addiction rather than something enjoyable to do. I think enough young people know about the negative downsides of it.
Yeah, so Jacob, what you mean there is that you're increasing each time the nicotine intake, is that right?
Yes, that's correct, because as your tolerance goes up, you need more in order to feel.
Yeah, so if we turn to the GP that we've got on the panel, Dr. Kagi, could you explain exactly what sort of damage that these vapes can actually do to your health, and how is it actually worse for children than it would be for adults?
Well, I think the thing to think about is this is not a black and white issue, in the sense that we know that vaping was introduced with an aim to help people stop smoking, because we know that smoking is cigarettes is one of the most dangerous things we can do, and it really damages our health in so many different ways. So vaping was meant to be a way to assist people to step down from addictive smoking of cigarettes to smoking something that had nicotine in it, which was regulated, which meant that you weren't smoking something that's very toxic, but just had some nicotine and less toxic substances. The problem is this, that at the moment what we've seen is that vaping's become very highly advertised, looked at really well. It's shown in social media channels like TikTok and Instagram as very attractive. But the problem is that it's unregulated in some ways, and therefore when you have lots of illegal vapes coming into the country and being sold very easily, we don't know what's in those vapes. And there's two problems we have. One is we don't know what's in them. So you've got different toxins and things that can potentially damage children and adults. But also that, as Jacob said, this addiction factor kicks in, and we all have nicotine receptors in our brain, and they are the ones that kick in that addiction. The problem is the more you vape, and especially when it's unregulated, so there's more nicotine, the more you want to vape, the more you get addicted, the more you need higher doses. And that's when you get symptoms like nausea and feeling sick and other things. So that's really where the challenge lies.
Yeah, John, turning to you now, Director General of the Vaping Industry Association. I used to smoke after I'd had a drink. Now, as my viewers might know, I do like the odd tipple, so I ended up smoking quite a lot. And I actually managed to get off smoking through a sort of transition with e-cigarettes, with vaping. So I think actually if more and more people are able to take that route, that these products are surely good and overall good for society, a net positive. But when it comes to children and these unregulated products, do you agree that we've got a problem?
Well, first of all, I'm going to clarify something that your previous speaker spoke about. The industry in this country is highly regulated, and we do know what's in these products. All of the legal products have to go through extensive toxicology testing. Those results have to be sent to the MHRA before a product is approved. So that's the first point. Secondly, most people who vape in the UK are actually reducing the amount of nicotine they intake. Most people who are regular smokers start on about 20 milligrams and actually wean themselves down to the most popular level, which is only 3 milligrams. So that's the first 2 points I would like to clarify. Now, is this an issue if young people are vaping? Absolutely. These products are designed for adults. They're designed for people who are over the age of 18 who smoke. That's what they're here for. The fact that they are in various different colours and various different flavours is something what's made vaping extremely popular. And it's now the most popular way to give up smoking here in the UK.
Yes, John, thank you for that. Your line was crackling up, so I apologise to viewers, but we'll come back to you in a second. Jacob, I'm wondering then, given your experience, and we've just been discussing there the net positive, the positives of this being able to transition to get people off of harmful cigarettes. Do you actually still support the product itself, or are you now deeply sceptical of them?
I'm kind of sceptical because, yes, it was introduced to cut down smoking, but how do we know that we're not bringing young people, that they will start off with the vapes and then eventually, when the vapes don't hit them anymore, how do we know if they won't switch to cigarettes? So rather than, decreasing their smoking, they'll just increase it. It's like an entrance to the market in a way for young people rather than cigarettes.
So, but John, you made that point there, which I think is quite an important one. It's illegal, right, for under 18s to be sold these products, to use these products. So if we consider that the law is already there to act as a backstop to stop kids getting hooked on these devices, and of course, as you say, the industry, the tobacco industry must be one of the most heavily regulated industries in the whole country, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, this is not a tobacco product. It's a nicotine product.
Right.
So this is regulated under a different set of regulations called the TRPR here in the UK. But to go back to your point, as we said, it is illegal for young people to buy the products if they're under the age of 18. But where the system is falling down is that trading standards, who are responsible for enforcing this, are grossly underfunded. And one of the things that we've actually called for is an increase in the fines up to £10,000 per instance, as well as the licensing of retailers selling vape products so we know who are selling these products.
Yeah, Dr. Cargill, would you agree with that? Do you think that's the solution to this problem? Because I think we're all agreed on the panel today that actually it would be the right thing to do to ensure that kids aren't using these products. But in order to go about doing that, it needs to be more robust as far as trading standards are concerned to actually stop these products from getting through to children outright.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key things we have to remember is that the the vaping and the concept of having the vapes in and of itself was a good concept to stop us from smoking cigarettes and coming off that. The problem is here that the cigarettes were aimed at everyone, and we had good reviews of advertising, and we sort of clamped down on how they're done. Vaping now is something that is synonymous with being young, with being trendy, with being cool. And this is the challenge, because the aim of the vape, as was mentioned by the previous speaker, was to get people who were smoking cigarettes to come off them. And now they're being taken as a very trendy thing for people who never smoked or for young children. And of course, the challenge is that when you do have different flavors and different attractive colors,
Oh, we just lost Dr. Cargy there. Jacob, was that what attracted you to these products? Was it the allure of being cool and hip and trendy and in vogue and all the rest of it?
I think it's also the fact that because all my friends do it, I don't associate any of the risks with it, because people aren't also educated on the risks of vaping as much as they are on cigarettes. As you know, everyone knows, oh, cigarettes are bad from the get-go, from when you were little, but no one really talks about vaping having any sort of downsides. They're just like, oh yeah, just take this, it'll make you feel better, you know, that sort of thing.
And John, I'm wondering then, is it your view that actually people just need to take more personal responsibility here?
Well, absolutely. You know, we're all adults here on this panel, but there's lots of adult products out there where, you know, they also come in bright flavors and many different colors. I know alcohol is one of those. So yeah, we do have a personal responsibility. And I think also parents have a huge responsibility to talk to their children and really explain. You know, I'm a father of 2 children myself. You know, I have these products all over my house, obviously. But my 2 children don't vape, they don't smoke, because they've been properly educated. They understand, and for them it's not cool. But one of the interesting things, though, is if you look at the data in this country, and the latest report only came out last week, well, there is quite a bit of young trial of these products at about 4 to 7%. Only about 1.7% of young people are actually vaping on a regular basis. And the vast majority of those were previous smokers. So in a way, we wish they would give up, but if they can't, it's far better for them to be vaping than it is to be smoking.
Yeah, and Dr. Cargy, would you agree with that actually the benefits are outweighed by the good impact of moving away from cigarettes?
Yeah, certainly. I think that we need to remember that vaping was introduced as a way to stop us from smoking, to bring us off that, to allow us to meet our nicotine demands that people who smoke would have, but actually not have all the toxins. I would challenge the other suggestion that, you know, multiple different coloured things are fine, and parent education is important, and personal issues, because I think we all know, and we're all adults in this room who can say that advertising is extremely strong and powerful, and social media is very difficult to police, hence why there's been a plethora of different issues to do with social media, not just related to this, of course, mental health and various other things we've talked about. So policing that, educating your children, being on top of that is not the easiest thing. And I think that's where the Department of Health, who've spoken about this recently, have echoed the calls really for improved safety of labelling and advertising standards. And I think that's really where this debate needs to move to, because I agree, you know, we are making a big difference, taking people away from cigarettes to vaping, and that's the lesser of 2 evils. But I still think that we need to be careful to safeguard our future generations, and I think that's where this debate really needs to go through.
Well, my personal view is that these are a miracle of modern technology, actually, and getting people off cigarettes, I think, is a really, really positive and good thing. But my thanks to you all, though. That was the Director General of the Vaping Industry Association, John Dunn, the GP, Dr. Mokaki, and the vapor aficionado, Jakub Koschewa. Thank you very much for your time. Now, of course, I'm joined in the studio today by the political commentator and author Joanne Nadler. Joanne, are you worried about these products? Are you of the view that, you know, these things are just going to be really cool and trendy, hip and happening for kids?
Well, I gather they are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a lot of evidence that children are buying these. And I take the point that everybody made in that discussion about point of sale and regulation and all the rest of it. And the overarching argument that this could be a positive thing because it helps people off cigarettes. But I think we're slightly avoiding what seems to actually be happening, which is, regardless of cigarettes, this might be something that's addicting children and making them more likely to end up smoking, or just, as Jacob explained, needing more and more of the product to get the requisite hit. So, I mean, what I have to say I find absolutely, I simply don't understand it, is when I walk down my local high street, I now see loads of shops selling these products. A lot of them seem to be quite random products. They don't look as if they're, regulated. Well, I take it from the gentleman they are regulated, but it all looks like a little bit of a kind of a market, essentially, and not one that seems to me to have any appeal at all to adults. I'm more mystified as to why an adult who perhaps wasn't trying to move off cigarettes would be attracted to these products, which look like sweets and do look as if they're very much designed to entice children.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to Joanne Nadler there. Now, my final story of the day, folks. Under Boris Johnson's leadership, the Conservative government it was actually under Theresa May's leadership, enshrined Britain's target to emit no more greenhouse gases by 2050. Net zero, as it's called, or net stupid, if you ask me. And in the debate last night on Channel 4, Kemi Badenoch was the only candidate who questioned whether or not we need this net zero by 2050 target. So should the Tories continue to pursue net zero? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the Head of Regulatory Affairs, friend of the show at the IEA, Victoria Hewson, and Jack Richardson, the climate lead at the Conservative Environment Network. And of course, we've got Joanne Nadler there, the political commentator and author, who was with me in the studio. Now, Jack, can I start with you? Can you just give me in a brief as you possibly can, the overall argument for why it's imperative that we do pursue net zero by 2050?
So first of all, I'd just like to clarify, it's not that we're not going to be emitting any more greenhouse gases, it's just that you balance the amount of greenhouse gases that you're emitting with the amount that you suck in from the atmosphere. So that's just a quick clarification. But secondly, if you're looking at a Conservative leadership contest, you know that you've got the public, 2/3 of them support net zero. A poll in June said that the public found that climate change is the third top issue, and they want answers on climate change. So the thing with net zero is that you've got to basically get started now, get the private finance in, tackle climate change emissions, and reduce the burden on the state to do it later.
Before I come to Victoria Hewson, who's no doubt chomping at the bit, I just want to show you these tweets from Ben Goldsmith, who is involved with the organisation, where he says that there's an overwhelming scientific consensus that the future of civilization depends upon curtailing climate-disrupting emissions, and that there are people who have succeeded in sowing doubt and slowing down global action on climate change for 30-plus years. He goes on in what I think is absolutely appalling to say that they are the anti-Semites and Hitler appeasers of our time. They must never be forgotten. Jack, when you actually hear arguments put across like this, can you understand why people who are concerned about the immiseration of the working class, where people are choosing between heating or eating their homes, why those sort of comments are frankly appalling?
So I don't necessarily agree with those comments exactly, but if you're going to talk about cost of the working class, then we can look at the cost of living crisis, which is fundamentally coming from our reliance on fossil fuels. So energy bills, for example, they're going up to 3,300 projected at the moment in October. That's down to the 500% rise in the price of natural gas. Filling up your tank, that's £2 a litre. That's due to volatility of oil markets. We can't control either of these prices. So if you want to help the working class, then the way to help them is to get them onto electrified heat, which costs a lot less, especially a heat pump costing less than a gas boiler now, or getting them to EVs, which cost less as well. It's about having more resource efficiency and shielding British households away from these volatile international markets. If you're going to talk about climate change, I mean, we're just about to have a massive heat wave at the moment. We had another 2 years ago.
Okay.
These things are going to become more frequent. If you want to be able to mitigate these extreme weather events, then you need to tackle emissions now. You've got 3 decades to do it. It's an economic transition. And I would say that Again, we can do it via markets and via growing new industries like carbon capture and storage and hydrogen. And again, you can make jobs out of it.
Well, let's bring Victoria in then. Victoria, Jack there speaks of market competition, of actually, you know, we can lead the world on this stuff. That must be music to your ears, is it not?
Well, I'm certainly in favour of markets and competition, but unfortunately the current policies in our energy market are miles away from free and competitive markets. They are absolutely riddled with different taxes, levies, subsidies, regulations, picking winners, and all of which has just delivered instability in the grid, which is only going to get worse because we can't simply switch off fossil fuels because they're necessary to cover the stability of the grid when the renewables are not delivering power. Green jobs, I'm afraid, is just one of the most pernicious myths of the net zero movement. These jobs that have been so-called created have come at a cost in subsidies of hundreds of thousands of pounds per job created. All
sorry, Victoria. Yeah. Joanne, just in a word, do you think actually the Conservative Party should scrap the net zero by 2050 target? We're just coming to the end of the show, unfortunately.
I think the Conservative Party needs to reflect on the cost of living crisis as affecting so many people. And I think the quite sensible suggestion from Kemi Badenoch that we review this in light of the crisis
I agree.
To be something that we should at least be having a discussion about.
Definitely. And Jack Richardson, I appreciate you actually coming on to have that discussion. We'll get you back on in the future. Jack Richardson from the Conservative Environment Network and Victoria Hewson from the IEA, thank you very much. And of course, Joanne Nadler joining me throughout the show. Thank you very much to her. But you have been watching Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. I thank you very much for your company. The show's on every Saturday and Sunday at 2 o'clock. But for now, let's have a check on the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, but some light rain will move into the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. This evening will stay dry across southwest England with some hazy sunshine. Cloud will gradually thicken from the west, and it will be a mild end to the day. Staying dry and bright in southeast England this evening with some late sunshine. It will be a warm evening, and a thin layer of cloud will turn the sunshine hazy at times. A dry end to the day in Wales with a gentle breeze. Sunny skies will gradually cloud over through the evening, but it will still feel warm. Staying dry in the Midlands this evening with sunny skies at first, turning a little cloudier to end the day with a gentle breeze. Skies will be largely cloudy in the northeast this evening, but it should stay dry, feeling cool by the coast with a brisk breeze. Largely cloudy and dry across southern Scotland tonight. However, there could be a few spots of light rain in the west later this evening. Patchy rain will also spread across Northern Ireland this evening. It will feel cool in the rain and under the cloudy skies, although some places may stay dry. Patchy rain will continue in the north tonight, but it will stay dry in the south. A mild night for all, with temperatures in double figures. But that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?